It's time for Trench Talk, for your weekly infusion of metal and otherwise heavy music. I'm your host, Flight of Icarus from MetalTrenches.com. As always, if you have not already, please do subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media, or better yet, sign up for our mailing list. Also a reminder that the 2019 Mathcore Index Fest is coming to the Oakland Metro Opera House in Oakland, California on Saturday, July 13th, 2019. There's a link down in the description for buying tickets. All right, I'm here with Chris Hornbrook, and most of my listeners probably know him from his work with Poison the Well, but he's also involved in a number of other projects. And
Yeah.
I guess kind of my first question then is, what are you up to these days?
I'll just kind of give like a little brief overview, just so people that are unfamiliar. So I basically got my start playing drums in Poison the Well from about 97, 98 till about 2009, 2010. And that's where I spent, a good portion of my time touring and recording and, growing as a drummer and musician and so on and so forth. After that, when Poison the Well went on hiatus, which was, I think, mid-2010, I was living in Florida at the time and decided to move to California to sort of open up my musical horizons and, work with new people, because I was burnt out on being in a band, because being in a band, either it could be very fruitful or it could not be fruitful. And from about, let's just say 99 till about 2006, it was pretty fruitful. We were growing in popularity and things were going good. And when Derek Miller, one of our primary dudes, quit, it sort of derailed us for a little bit. And I do think that we were able to kind of get back on in terms of finding a new way to be creative and, still being able to maintain our sound. But I kind of look at it like waves, right? So Poison the Well was able to catch the particular, musical wave in like 97, 98, 99.
Yeah.
For hardcore, metalcore, however you want to kind of categorize it. And, we continued to catch waves through our first three records. But when Derek quit and we separated from Atlantic, it took us a minute to kind of get back up on. And when we did, at that point, we had missed a few different waves. And, it was just kind of like a slow decline after that. But anyways, so I moved to California because I wanted, more opportunities. And I also, too, I kind of wanted to get away from heavy music because I had done it for such a long period of time, and also being involved with Poison the Well, which I found, especially towards the end, was becoming more and more musically diverse and interesting.
Yeah.
That I wanted to kind of continue to work with bands or artists or whatever that kind of saw music the same way that I did. So I moved here. It took me a few years to kind of get more established as like a hired gun. And I started working with this pop artist called Big Black Delta, which is this guy, John Bates. He used to play in M83, and he used to be in this band called Melodrone. And that was really interesting because it was more like ELO, sort of, Peter Gabriel. But it was good. It was really good pop songs, and he was really interesting. And then from that, I had transitioned to working with that band Senses Fail for about 3 years. And then from that, I transitioned into working with this guy named Danny Harrison, who is George Harrison from the Beatles. It's his son.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he was launching a solo career under his name. Prior to that, he had just kind of done different bands where he was a member and a pretty integral member, but not anything that sort of had his name on it. And I've been doing that it's coming up on 2 years. And then in between all of that, I've done different sessions. Like I've worked for different bands. Like I worked for that band Phoenix TX, did a session for them. I did a session for this band called the Black Queen, which is like a Greg from the Dillinger Escape Plan. It's got Josh that used to be in Lucifer and 9 Inch Nails. I work with them because Greg's a homie. And just like kind of side work like that. Nothing super, super crazy, but like, just like little side sessions. Like I've done
Yeah.
side sessions for Danny before because he scores a lot of music. He is a good scoring partner. And like play drums on that Hulu documentary, Obey Giant, the one that's on Shepherd Ferry.
Oh, okay.
So it's just stuff like that. But the main things were Poison the Well, Big Black Delta, Census Fail, and now Danny Harrison.
Cool. So all over the place. And I think something that stuck out too, like you're talking about wanting to branch out and kind of go in that more diverse direction that Poison the Well was going. And that was something that interested me about your discography when I was young and was just like really in that music. I mentioned in my other video that You Come Before You is like the pinnacle of like just sort of peak metalcore for me. That's like one of my all-time favorite albums. And there was such a shift from that to Versions. And and that's the period you were talking about, right? Where you kind of were going through some pretty big transitions. So could you speak a little bit more on what that looked like as you were developing that album and sort of what led to those changes in the sound?
Yeah. So with You Come Before You, that was pretty much like the band has always functioned as a collective, but there was always I guess I always referred to it as the idea guy, right? And for You Come Before You, Derek was the idea guy. So he would have a rough sketch of one or two parts. He would go to Ryan, and like the sound of Poison the Well is basically Ryan Premack. That weird, dissident, weird atonal chords and the way he kind of puts stuff together. That is Ryan in terms of like guitar melody. So Derek and Ryan would get together and they would hash out ideas, get kind of like a broad, like a broad structure of sorts, and then bring it to me. And then we would sit in a room and we'd figure out where we kind of wanted to take the arrangement. I would add my 2 cents. And then from there, we would take it to Jeff, and then Jeff would say, oh, I like this a lot, or I don't like this. And then he would start placing vocals over it. So that record was very much led by Derek, and with that too, I know that for him, that record was really heavily influenced by The Refused. Because I remember having a conversation with him about it. He got really, really into that band, which was kind of funny because I was the one that introduced him to Refused. So it's just this like weird circle, right? So we did that record, and Derek quit. He decided he wanted to sort of focus his efforts elsewhere. He, wasn't really into doing heavy music anymore. And from that point, then Ryan basically took over being the idea guy. And that's kind of where Versions came from.
Okay.
But it was a little bit more collectively, it became more of a collective because Derek was very specific about what he wanted. Obviously, there was freedom, but he was very specific. I'm trying to go for this, or I'm trying to go this way or that way. So we'd always kind of have that in mind. Whereas when we shifted to Versions, it was very much, Ryan was the idea guy, so to speak. But at that point, then we all became the idea guys. So it became it was a little bit more, instead of there being like a figurehead dude, then it became more of like, more of communism, I suppose, in terms of how we sort of approach things. And it worked really well for a while for Versions and for Tropic Rot. That was, everybody had an equal say. And I think it really yielded a lot of creativity because, instead of the focal creative point coming, say, from one guy, it was coming from everybody, But I definitely have to say that like Versions is definitely the Ryan Premack record because he's all over the place musically. He listens to a lot of classic rock. Well, at least at the time, listened to a lot of classic rock. He listened to a lot of like more old school country music. He was also very much into progressive rock. So, on top of being like into hardcore, more traditional hardcore and punk, and you can kind of hear all those elements in there,
Yeah, totally. I mean, that is the album that strikes me as just being the most diverse. It's trying the most new things. And in the moment, like just being a dumb kid who just kind of wanted more of the same back then, I was really frustrated with it initially. But over the years, I've come to really love that album because it's like, honestly, as an adult now, I hate it when bands just do the same thing over and over
Yeah.
again. So it's kind of refreshing to put that one on and hear all these different ideas. So,
Well,
yeah,
it's definitely, just on a side note, it's frustrating by design.
interesting.
It was intended to be frustrating. It wasn't intended to be a digestible record, because it was very much a reflection of what we were going through individually, but also collectively. So it's like Derek quits, Ryan's dad passes away. We start going through turmoil with Atlantic because they're expecting us to deliver one type of record, and we want to deliver another type of record. And there's the whole splitting process of that. We're also touring in between, like we did Sounds of the Underground tour, which was like a cool festival run that happened. I think it was like 2005.
Yep, I saw you guys there.
Yeah,
I was
we
in
went
the
to
I was in the
we went to
audience.
Europe with Dillinger too, which was another cool.
Yeah.
Like, we were touring in between, and it was like trying to re-solidify a lineup, because we've always had a problem. We've always had like an issue with bass players, and I think it's been more of either they know how to play or their personality doesn't. Like, okay, so they either don't know how to play, but they're great fucking guys and they get along in the fold, or it's like the opposite, you know. And it took us a while to be able to find a dude that fit the role that we needed. And so that was part of it too. We were going through bass players, and we had this guy named Jason Boyer. He used to play in this South Florida hardcore band called Target Nevada. He's played in like a bunch of other, you know, bands from down there. And more recently, he's like the touring guitar player for Sleigh Bells, which Sleigh Bells is the band that Derek formed when he quit Poison the Well.
Yeah.
Which is even more ironic, because like the guy that replaced him in Poison the Well now plays in his band. So it's just like weird. It's just like this weird thing. But yeah, it was just really hard to find people because, you know, me, Jeffrey, and Ryan, you know, we've been doing this since like 98, 99. And our dynamics amongst one another and our roles in the band are very defined. So it's like, imagine being like a new guy coming into it and having to find your place. And maybe, you know, the place that they normally held in a band was already being held by me and Jeff.
Yeah.
Or by Jeff and Ryan, or by Ryan. So it was just really difficult to find somebody or find people to be able to, you know, fit those roles. We eventually found a great bass player, this guy named Brad Grace, who joined when we were touring on Versions. And we met him through Derek. He's actually really close with Derek, and he guitar teched for us when we were touring on You Come Before You. And it just so happens that he was just a really fantastic bass player, and his role, it just fit really well with us.
You know, just random question, since you brought up Sounds of the Underground. I remember that show very well, and I recall that a bunch of the people in the audience were very upset that y'all did not play Nerdy. And I've always been curious, just from that point on, like, was that just not in the set list that day, or were you all just kind of sick of playing that song? Because I know it was like kind of like your signature for a long time.
Yeah. I vaguely remember that, because obviously it was a really long time ago. The only thing I can think of is that few things. First off, it depends, because sometimes with those festival runs, things run behind, so people's sets get cut short. And you sometimes will step on stage and not fully realize that's what's going on, or you think you have more time than you do. Or it's a normal set time, you're on stage, but there's an issue. A guitar goes out, or this happens or that happens, or usually it has to do with set times. I can't really specifically remember that. I'm just kind of throwing out typical things in the past, because that's usually our closer. And if we wouldn't have played that either, you know, also there's another possibility that set times got cut short, but nobody really realized that until you're on stage. And then there's a stage manager saying, hey, you guys got 2 minutes left, or you guys got a minute left. And it just so happens, since Nerdy was like always the last song, you kind of get stuck, and you're like, okay, well, I guess we're not playing that. You know, that's happened a few times throughout the years, especially if you're on like a support tour or you're doing festivals. Like, you know, just shit like that happens. So no, we know we have to close with that song. That's part of our
You don't
that's
have
part
to,
of our
though.
thing. You know?
I found it
Unless
kind of
there's
funny. Like, I was looking around at all these people, and I'm like, yeah, I want to hear Nerdy, but that was a fucking rad set. And like, are we really gonna complain?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't remember because, dude, it was like, what, 2005, 2006?
It
So we're
was like
talking about 14.
2004, I want to say, because it was like my last year of high school. I was graduating, so I think
So that's a very long time ago.
That was a killer
you know,
lineup too. So many good bands.
What festival was it, or what tour was it?
So it was the Sounds of the Underground, very first Sounds of the Underground, and it was like Guar, Opeth, Every Time I Die, I think was there. Norma Jean.
What city?
Chicago.
Why was that? Why would that have been in Chicago? That's really the only thing I can think of those possibilities. I like thinking about it now. I'm completely drawing a blank. But yeah, it was just like either one of those.
I was just excited to see.
Didn't realize, because sometimes too with those festivals, if they get up and going late, like if there's hiccups when they're setting up the stages and getting the audio going, it trickles down. Yeah. So if doors are supposed to be at noon and then they get pushed to 12:30 or they get pushed to 1 or 1:30, then what happens with that is that, well, it trickles down to all the band's set list times, except for, like, say if Lamb of God was headlining. Yeah, they were. It doesn't affect them, but it'll affect everybody up until the point that it evens out. Yeah. So,
and you were later in the afternoon too, I think, like nearing the last two bands. But yeah. Anyways,
but it's always a confusion with set list times. It's always a sort of confusion. Shit got cut short. You think you have 45, but you really have 40. Nobody told you, or somebody didn't know. It's always a communication error of some sort. Yeah.
You know, another thing I wanted to ask you, because you guys started Poison the Well, you were like 18, right?
17, 18.
17, 18. So one thing I'm always curious about asking people who sort of like get famous so young, like what that experience was like, because generally I don't recommend it, because like for a lot of people it doesn't turn out very well, but you seem to be doing all right, and I just wanted to sort of pick your brain about that.
So it depends, right? Like, I can only speak to my experience. For me, it has to do, there's a few factors involved. The very first thing is I don't really care about adulation and like the spotlight being on me. It's not something I desire. And the more that I've lived in California and have kind of hung out with people in bigger bands or semi-famous people, or, you know, famous people, just say you're at a party and there's famous people there. The more that I've noticed that it comes from a place of like, they feel empty and hollow and they search for that, you know, attention, celebrity, whatever you want to call it, to fill a void. But you have to kind of find that shit within yourself. You have to be self-content, or you have to be okay, or whatever, right? So it becomes a bottomless pit. Well, all they're doing is just trying to fill it up. Yeah. And it's not getting filled up, so it's just like, well, what do? You have to keep – it's like taking drugs, right? Not that I take drugs, but it's like you think of like a heroin addict. It's like they get high, and then it just takes a little bit more to get them high, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. They get clean. They fucking, you know, go away. They come back, and then they try to take the same amount of heroin that they're taking before, and they overdose. It's very similar in terms of like with that sort of thing. So for me, I just don't care about that sort of attention, like that level of attention. Like, yeah, like I'm a human being. Like, obviously, you want to be recognized for the effort that you put into things, or if you accomplish something, it feels good. But I don't really like at this point. Like, Poison was part of my past. I don't think of myself like I've continued to sort of build my identity on other things. So it's like there's people that just their identity becomes their band, and they're just constantly trying to be associated with it, be associated, and just fill that void. And I'm just not really that type of guy. I just kind of want to be more of the sort of the drummer, like the guy in the background, just beating the shit out of his drums, and, you know, seen and heard, but not heard in the sense of like I need to talk, but just you hear my drums, you know. Yeah. So that's why I think that me as a person, I'm pretty even keeled because of that. It's just like I don't care about that. I'm more of an introvert. Like I don't need that attention to validate me. It's just like I know who I am. I'm very proud of what Poison the Well has accomplished. I'm very proud of what I have accomplished. I definitely, like, on social media and stuff, I'll definitely do throwback photos and shit like that. But it's more of like honoring and being grateful for what my past has given to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So it's like I honor what Poison the Well is and was, because it's like I wouldn't be where I'm at right now because of it. And I also recognize it's a really rare thing. It's like we put out 5 really interesting records. Some of them, and this not being said for me, but, from what people say is that they're important parts of a particular genre / subgenre of music. And to me, that's just, it's really humbling, and it's really, I don't know. I just want to pay tribute to it. I want to be grateful for that because I know that doesn't happen all that often. So it's like,
you don't define yourself by it. And I think that is an important deciding factor. Like, I mean, what you're describing is you have a very strong kind of, I was talking with Finn about like internal versus external locus of control. It sounds like you're very kind of more self-determined. You've got good self-esteem just in your capabilities and what you're doing, and you're not trying to define yourself by what everybody else thinks about it.
And it's also too, like, I'm very aware of who I am and what my strengths are, but I'm also very aware of like what my weaknesses are, and I accept them and I'm okay with them. And when I say I'm okay with them, it's not like I just let them sit there. Like, obviously I try to improve upon the things that are a little bit more difficult for me. And, I might fail repeatedly, or I might make small little incremental, ascensions. But I'm very aware and I'm very okay with things because I realize that, like, my strengths as a person outweigh my weaknesses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just acceptance. I'm just very accepting of everything. And I try not to let, like, my shortcomings and my weaknesses, like, take a hit on my self-esteem at all. Yeah. Or like my willingness to move forward or anything like that. Just because it's, I just kind of how I am. I guess I'm fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, you are. Because, I mean, honestly, a lot of people struggle with that and are absolutely, like, crippled by the idea of failure or making a mistake or, saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And,
I think there's a few other factors that play into that. It's like, I'm also like a little bit of a nihilist in that regard where, I definitely have to say I'm 50% realist, like, 50% realist, 40% dreamer. And that obviously, like, fluctuates. But there's like a 10 to 15% of me that's just very nihilistic and doesn't really believe in anything or believe that life has any, like, life doesn't have any meaning. So you have to ascribe meaning to life. You have to make it worth it is, because, like, I think Joe Rogan says is like we're on this little blue fucking dot that's just like going whatever 1,000 miles an hour in the void of nothing out there. It's like you really start looking at the way the world is. It's like there's like we're here to survive and procreate. Past that, it's like you have to give it meaning. So I think that, like, meaninglessness and, like, I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
also, I'm still
100%
fucking waking up
does.
and I'm still drinking coffee. So if I'm not making any sense, like, stop me.
No,
you have to give things meaning.
Yeah.
You have to say, okay, well, I'm here. This is what the fucking cards that I've been dealt. Okay, that's fine. That's cool. Like, what's important to me? Playing drums, playing music, being around people I care about, having healthy relationships with family members, and having healthy relationships with friends, doing things that make me happy, becoming better at things. Okay, well, that's I guess my mission. That's what my mission is. And it's like, okay, well, I'm 38 now. Who knows how many more years I have? I could die tomorrow. I could die next week. I could die in a month. Like, let me go full force. And it's like, that's just kind of how I look at things.
Yeah. You and I are on the exact same wavelength with this. Like, I think there are a lot of people out there that are struggling and that are honestly miserable because they're waiting for meaning to come from somewhere else. Like, they're waiting for this big cosmic thing to come from whatever, either, come from faith or the government or their community or whatever. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're born into whatever situation you're born into, and it really is kind of up to you. And the most happy, productive people I know, they come from all different walks of life, and it's just been a matter of they had somebody in their life who pushed them towards this idea of, it's you make the meaning. Like, you decide what are your goals, what's important to you, and when things happen, how do you use those different things to continue to push yourself forward no matter how rough it gets.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I kind of have to get moving. So, yeah. I mean, I can still talk, but unfortunately I have to put you back on.
Yeah, I hear you.
Speakerphone. So let me know if things are unintelligible.
So I guess with that in mind, was there someone like in your life that did push you in that direction?
For me, I'd have to say, like, it all comes from my parents. Both my parents are, super fucking weird people in good and bad ways, right? My dad is a very strong, dominant man. He has a strong frame. He's very analytical. He has a lot of, street smarts and common sense. And when I was young, he tried to push me in certain directions. And, my mom is like way more book smart, also like very, very strong, very dominant, which, that kind of doesn't really work together. You can't have two dominant people and sharing a frame.
Yeah.
So that's probably why they're not married anymore. But I just came from people that like were very different from one another, but like shared a similar moral framework and try to teach me to be something of value, to be something of worth. And, that's where I think it came from. Having like a strong, somewhat healthy family. Like not all families are completely healthy.
Yeah, no one's perfect, but relatively speaking.
I got really lucky. I have a good relationship with both my parents. Not perfect, but a really really good relationship. And I think that they taught me really well. I picked up on a lot of things, and I'm grateful. And a lot of it too, I'd have to say, comes from my mom. She's like she constantly wants to learn. And, the older I get, the more I become more fascinated with like bettering myself, whether it has to do with like health or education or whatever. That's kind of part of like my mission as well. It's like, well, I want to kind of understand the reality of the world, and I want to understand how things really, really work. And I want to be as knowledgeable and as educated as possible, so that when I put myself in particular situations, I'm not operating at a disadvantage,
Yeah. It is something worth being grateful for, because I'd say a good percentage of bands that I talk to or people from bands, like, it's like they got into this music for a reason, and like a lot of it's because they have like their own like trauma that they're dealing with, and some really deep-rooted stuff happened to them in early childhood that kind of messed them up and put them in that place like you were describing, where now you've got to like fill that hole with fame, or just like that being on stage, and then drugs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Also too, I think for me as well, like my dad's a bass player, and he tried his hand at music, and things were a little bit different back then. So I don't really necessarily think that he was able to fully accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. And I feel like in the early stages, he projected a lot of his failures onto me. And I don't think it was intentional. I just think that, we just project certain things, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big fuel that fueled me when I was really, really young to prove him wrong, because it's just like, well, don't, just because you weren't able to do something, like, don't push that onto me. You know what I mean? It should be the opposite. You should actually try and be more supportive, But I feel like over time I was able to sort of, prove myself to him and prove certain things to myself. So that was definitely like a really, really big thing in the early years of Boys in the Well, because also too, it's like my dad comes from a certain particular era of music, and suddenly his son is playing heavy music where there's some fucking guy screaming. If you don't really understand where things are musically and, genres and subgenres, you're going to be like, yo, this is fucking unlistenable. Like, who's going to listen to this, But obviously people wanted to listen, so.
Well, also maybe even some feeling of like, well, I was doing real music and was not able to be successful with that. And then here is my, my child's
Totally.
son that's, making noise, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
he's hitting it big.
Yeah. I mean, that could be part of it too. I mean, he never said that, but I'm sure that played a role. Because I can't, for me too. I mean, if I had a kid and he played me some like weird dog shit music, and he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna make money off this. I'm gonna do this, and I'd be like, all right. I mean,
Yeah.
I would not be supportive, but I'd be like, all right, man, you gotta think of some sort of backup plan. So I get it. I understand it from like
Yeah.
an intellectual point of view. Like I totally understand.
Yeah,
But
I'm picturing too, like if one of my daughters started being like a SoundCloud rapper or something with the like mumble rap lyrics, that would it would be hard for me.
Yeah, because you also hope too that you teach your kid right, and that you're like they like cool shit. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be exactly like from your particular era of music, but you hope that like they like quality stuff. Like yeah, if I had a kid, he's like I want to be a rapper. I'd be like, yo, what are you doing? Like that's like not rapper, but like SoundCloud rapper.
Yeah, that
better
specific
example.
type of rapper I'm thinking. Like
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I feel like even in like the hip hop world, it's considered like lowbrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard podcasts with like even like Snoop Dogg and 50 Cent of all people making fun of it, even though like 50 Cent's kind of like a starting point for that. But anyways,
It's very true.
yeah. Everyone's got an opinion, I guess. And it's inescapable. I mean, the next generation never fully makes sense to, the past generation. And it's been kind of funny to see that as a longtime metal fan, because I think, a lot of us listening to metal, back in the day, it was just sort of like, oh, we're like the most kind of woke like crowd of like music now, or the most open-minded, like we can do anything and we can just make any sort of noise, and like we're okay with that, and so therefore like nothing's gonna shock us. But lo and behold, like there's there's plenty of music out there right now that I'm now like the old guy on the porch going like, this isn't music, this is trash. And I just try to go past that.
100%. And it's like if you notice over time, it like the ante keeps going up and up and up. Like I remember when I was like 17, 18 years old, like getting tattoos and stuff like that, like on your forearms. That was like a big deal. Like I remember how bummed my parents got because they just assumed that I wouldn't be able to make a living or get like a normal job. And then long and behold, back to like the mumble rappers thing. Now they have just like garbage tattooed on their face. And like not to say that you like I'm pretty sure that they couldn't walk into like a normal job and that's the new extreme, right?
Yeah.
But like I know a lot of people that like having like tattoos on your forearms is like very like tame in comparison to what is out there now.
Yeah. I live in Portland, Oregon, and like every other person has sleeves or some sort of tattoo, and we hire counselors that have like neck tattoos, and we've had people
like it's not even a big deal anymore. Like hand tattoos and neck tattoos, like it's like okay. Like it's just part of like where society is right now, and like I guess cultural norms, or they just they get pushed with every generation.
Yeah.
And like that's fine. Like I don't have any problems with that. Like I wouldn't. If I in the past, obviously Poison the Well, we had to hire people. We did not hire people because they had fucking tattoos or anything. It's like, do you do your job good? Cool. That's all I really care about.
Yeah. But it is interesting. I think there's just a natural need to rebel, like regardless. Like everybody needs that like feeling that like, okay, I need to kind of brush against the system, so to speak, to kind of figure out where I stand. And and so the broader the kind of boundaries get, the harder I think it gets for people to kind of find that boundary to rub against it. And so people are just doing weirder and weirder stuff because more and more things have become acceptable, like even outside of tattoos.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way it goes, and I accept that like I'm a 38-year-old dude that like probably doesn't get 18-year-olds or like 20-year-olds or even like mid-20s. It's okay. I think
Yeah.
that's just the natural course of things. That's just the way it's supposed to go, and that's totally fine. That's totally cool.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, how are you feeling about being so close to 40? I know some people just don't care and it's just, another thing, and other people like it's a big deal. So how is it for you?
I just turned 38, so it hasn't fully sunk in that like, less than 2 years, I'm 40. I mean, I don't really, getting older to me doesn't really bother me all that much. I think it's more so I have really high standards for myself in terms of like where I want to be career-wise and what I want to be making money-wise and the things that I want to do with my life. And I've been pretty successful. I'm pretty content, but I don't feel like I've hit certain marks. And I just don't know if like they're unrealistic expectations or what. You know what I mean? So I also try to balance certain things off of friends that are a little bit more objective, so they can kind of like bring me back down to reality.
Interesting.
If that makes any sense at all.
No, yeah, I think it does. And again, I think that's a good outlook. It's not something.
I tried to, man.
Yeah, it's not something. I think less in terms too of like years, and more in terms of like where my like just lifestyle and responsibilities are at right now. And some of them I'm happy with, some of them I'd like to see a little bit different. And there are times where I just miss like the days of being able to just, go out to shows or just play video games or whatever. But I think I always just come back to like, if I hadn't been through all the things that I've been through now, if I wasn't doing what I was doing right now, if I wasn't working on the current challenge or struggle, then I wouldn't be the person I am. And this is like, again, bringing meaning to it. Like, this is who I'm supposed to be. Like, this is, driving me towards something bigger and better. And it's not always as maybe, I don't know, fun's the right word, but like, it's what you do.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also too. It's like you make the choices that you make. Like from what you're saying, it's like you're a father, and obviously that's something that you wanted, which is great. I'm not a father. I don't think I'll ever have kids. Like, I don't have the father bone. Like, there's just some dudes that have that father bone or muscle. They have the father muscle, and I just don't think that I have it. I mean, I'm also not even really into the idea of marriage. Like, I don't really have any desire to get married either. And, These are things that I've accepted and I've implemented into my life because I've chose myself, right? Like, I've chose my sort of selfishness of things that I want to pursue as being more important than having children and getting married. And, like, with that being said, it's like, it's not all gain. Like, when you choose a certain lifestyle and you choose to do a certain thing, like, you're also there's going to be some, like, downfalls that come with that.
Yeah.
And as much as I say I don't have the father bone, that doesn't mean that I don't kind of yearn for it, like, biologically speaking. Like, mentally and emotionally, I don't want any kids. But it's like, biologically, I do feel the pull to want to have children, you know what I mean? But it's like, I just know that it's just not for me. And same thing with, like not necessarily marriage, but, like, serious relationships. Like, I'm also not, like, at least right now in my life, I'm not really into the idea of a serious relationship, just because I feel like the way the world's going and the way things are culturally and socially right now, it's like things are very adversarial between men and women. And I don't know. I don't want to get into a relationship if that's where it's at.
You just don't want to deal with it, basically.
Would you say? Repeat that?
I said you just don't want to deal with it, basically, which is fair.
Yeah. I also don't want to settle, right? It's like, I want a particular type of relationship, and I don't know if that's necessarily congruent with the way things are right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's like I am more than I'm more than entitled to want what I want, as people out there want what they want. So it's like, I'm like, okay, well, what makes me happy? Playing drums, playing music, having my time, pursuing things that make me happy. And as long as I'm not hurting anybody, which I don't go out of my way to hurt anybody intentionally, it's like, more power to me, I guess. It's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm not making the argument that like you should get married or you should have kids or whatever, but I would push back a little bit against the whole like I don't have that bone or muscle. Like I know somebody right now, one of my really good friends for many years, he was that guy who was saying like I don't think I don't think I want to bring kids like into this world. I don't think I have it in me. Like I don't think I can really do that, or that's just really my forte. And same with relationships, because he's really particular about like what he likes to do and how he likes to use his time. And he's having his first kid, and like I'm already seeing that adjustment. And I think people who fall into that category of like, well, I make meaning with the life that I have right now, regardless of what it is. Like, it's not really a matter of a bone or muscle you have. Like, I wasn't even really sure about it either, but it's like, once you're like, okay, I'm having kids now, so how am I going to adjust to this? What does my life mean now? What does this mean to where I'm moving forward? So I just make the argument that I don't think you're missing something that would not allow you to do that. I just think that you've prioritized what you've prioritized, and that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah. With that being said, I don't have a lot of patience, and I know you have to have a lot of patience with kids, and that's kind of a big thing. Like whenever I'm around children, they generally just annoy me. You know? And like I said, that's fine. As long as I don't bring a child into this world and belittle that child because that child is getting on my nerves, like that's not fair to the child. So I just forego everything because it's like generally I'm really irritated by children because children don't know anything. And that's kind of what, goes hand in hand with their muscle. You have to show them. I just don't think, I think that, honestly speaking, I'm a little too impatient and selfish to want that. Now, maybe down the road, maybe at 45 or 50, because, men have that luxury in terms of, biologically how we are. I might be able to have a kid then, and I might be in a more of a place to be a bit more patient about things and to be less selfish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But right now, at 38, the last thing on my mind is having children.
No, that's cool. I will let you in on a trade secret, though. All parents are annoyed with their children. They're just good at hiding it in certain situations.
Yeah, and also, too, it's like it's a different investment, right? It's like you can be irritated with your kid, but then you look at your child and, like, you feel this deep love, and it's basically half of your genetics, and obviously if you're married or you're with your girlfriend and you love her, then it's half of her genetics. So it's like I understand it. It's just I've never experienced it. I don't know. Maybe one day I will, but like right now, I just zero desire. But I have the utmost respect. I have a bunch of friends that have kids, and they're very patient, they're very dedicated, and that's awesome. And I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Well, and I think, to be fair, too, it's especially hard to have kids when you're doing music as, like, a primary career, because the touring takes you away from them, and, it requires a lot of time and investment, and so do the kids, so it really is this constant strain in that situation. There's less room for a really good balance, unless, like, you're in a position where you can do kind of less work for more money, like the much higher paid musicians, but that's like the 1% of musicians out there.
Well, I've seen this dynamic. I have a few friends that kind of go this way, whereas their wives or girlfriends are the primary breadwinner. Like, they're the ones that have the consistent income. So what happens is, like, let's just say, musician A has a wife that's like a psychologist or a doctor or a lawyer or just has some very high paying job, and then he is the one that like will go on tour and then come home and have like $10,000, but then be off for 2 months.
Yeah.
So that $10,000 gets appropriated somewhere else, and the consistent income of the wife or the girlfriend is what maintains. That's kind of what I noticed, because it's like I do know a bunch of people and have a bunch of friends that like their girlfriends and wives like fucking make bank, but they do well themselves. It's just different because it comes in chunks and in bursts, So
and it's unpredictable too. Like, you never know when a tour is going to get canceled, or like the bus is going to break down, or what the weather is going to be like. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. And that kind of also goes back to the very, very first thing that we started talking about where, I said I moved to California to be a hired gun because I was sick of being in a band. That was part of it. Like, being a hired guy, you're guaranteed your income.
Yeah.
Someone could say, hey, we're touring for 2 months, and you know what your weekly salary is going to be, and you can predict it, so you can build life budgets around that, whereas when you're in a band and you go on tour, you are a principal business owner, or you share that business with 1 or 2 or 3 other people. So, like any other normal business, you pay, you get $100,000 in from a tour, but you got to pay for the bus, you got to pay for the van, and then you got to pay for crew, and then you got to pay for supplies, and then you got to pay for commissions.
Yep.
And then suddenly, $100,000 turns into like 30. And you're like, that's sick. But then you have to fucking split that amongst 3 or 4 other people. And in some situations, it works out in your favor. In other situations, it doesn't. Or like you said, you miss shows because the bus breaks down, or things get canceled, or this or that. And then it's like the inconsistency of that makes it really difficult to want to be in a band and do that. So it's easier for dudes that I know that are hired guns in bands. They could just say, okay, we're touring for 3 months. Cool. And it's locked in, and you're going to be out for 3 months, and you can predict, and you can budget. And if you have a wife and you have a kid, then you could start preparing that a little bit better.
Yeah. I think personally, I like the idea of being a musician, but in practice, all that just sounds like way too much stress and and unknowns for me.
That's also, as a side note, it's also a personality type.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the same way. Like, I want to know that my income is predictable and it comes in, because it's like, it's your stability and it's your livelihood. There's a part of my personality that wants that, but then there's my other part of my personality where it's just like, well, I have to go out into the unknown on my own, and I don't want to work for anybody. Like, either I want to be a partner in a business, or I want to work with somebody. Like, when you are a hired gun, you are technically an independent contractor. So at any point, if you have a bunch of different bands or artists that you're working for, and one of them starts giving you shit, you could just be like, well, I'm out.
Yeah, later.
You're essentially you are your own boss.
Yeah.
So there's the part of my personality that's like, I don't want to be told what to do. Like, you say, hey, this is what we need from you. I sign on. Cool. But like, when you're in a band or you're working for a band, it's not cool, like corporate job. I've noticed with that, it's just like, you do your job and there's like weird, intervals of time, then your higher ups start filling that void with more bullshit to do, because they want to fucking suck every like drop out of you. You know what I mean? Whereas like, typically when you work for a band or somebody, they hire you because you for that 45 minutes, an hour and a half, you go on stage, it's a fucking home run. Like, you knock it out of the park. So they're not concerned with being like, well, we have, you're on tour and there's all this open time. You should be doing this, that, or the third. It's like, no, I'm paying you to do your thing. You signed up for this. Cool. And it's an even exchange. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, kind of wrapping things up here, I think still tying in that theme of meaning, and you talked a little bit about sort of what you're not passionate about right now. What would you say you're most passionate about right now? Like, what's your biggest sort of goal, thing that you're working towards, and what's most important to you?
Being better. And I know that's like kind of hard to define, but like being better, like being a better person, being better at playing the drums, being a better musician. And I try to focus my energy as evenly as I can over all those things to be just a better person. Because, we all operate at deficits. We can be better morally. We can be better intellectually. We can be better. It's just like, you have one life, like, be the best. I'm very much an advocate of being the best version of yourself that you can be. Because it's like, why not? Like, are you going to just sit around and play video games all day and like, woe is me? Or are you going to get up and you're going to like try to change things? Because like, I know how it is to achieve and like be happy. And it's a really great feeling. And I've been in situations where I've been, super, super depressed. And it feels fucking awful. So I understand the contrast of both feelings. And like, I'd rather be in a position where I feel good and, I'm trying to achieve stuff and like hitting roadblocks along the way, which can be super frustrating. But then when you make those little incremental achievements, it just feels really good.
And how would you say you do that? Like, just work on getting better? Is it just that daily, like, constantly working on things and really just putting your whole self into it, or is there more to it than that?
I think it's more tied in just don't give up, because you're going to fail, and you're going to fail a lot. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're going to fail a whole fucking lot. It's not going to be a home run the very first time. You know what I mean? Especially if you start working out, right? You're going to like get on like a good regimen, and you're going to start lifting or doing cardio. And then you're going to kind of like, it's going to fall by the wayside for a little bit, and you're going to miss a few weeks, or you might miss a month because you're busy. Like that's a mini failure. It's okay. All you could do is just show back up at the gym or show back up at the park and get back up on the horse and do it. And, you start making gains, and you start, your weight goes down to the weight that you want, or you start losing body fat, or you start building muscle, and you start seeing it. And when you start seeing results on things, like then you start getting addicted to seeing the results. So then you just want to keep pushing. But yeah, don't give up. That's it.
As we're talking, I have a whiteboard on the wall in front of me with like stuff that I need to remember and like motivational stuff. And I've got a quote going back. You mentioned Rogan earlier, and this was something I heard, I think Rogan say on the show was, you win or you learn instead of you win or you lose. And that was something that really stuck with me, because like you're going to fail, and it's bringing meaning to those failures. Like, don't make it be like, oh, I failed and now it's over. It's like, okay, I failed at that. Why did I fail? How am I going to get better at that?
Yeah.
How am I going to improve given the outcome this time? Like, I feel like that's necessary. And so that's why it kind of irritates me that so much of kind of the zeitgeist culturally right now, and, what you hear on social media and people talking about sort of this idea of like anything that makes you uncomfortable is bad. And I'm like, no, those things that make you uncomfortable, like, are exactly the things that help you become a better person. Like, because it's your job to sort of work through that.
100%, man. We live in the Nerf generation.
Yeah.
Everything has to be padded. Everybody has to get a participation trophy. Like, you don't become better unless you fail and you recognize that you fail.
Yep.
Like, that helps create character. That helps create, it's, I completely agree with you, man. Another good saying that I heard is, success leaves clues, but also failure leaves clues too, right?
Yep.
So it's like, if you fail at something and you're not really like looking at the nuance of like, well, why did I fail? Or because if it's not so obvious why you failed, then like, you're not gonna like learn from it. And it's like, yeah, man, I totally agree, man. Social media these days, it's pretty disheartening. I'm trying to like back off as much as I can, because it's not a healthy thing to be involved with at all.
No, because
obviously
it just propagates all these messages like a virus. It's really terrible.
It really does, man. It really does. And it's just not good. It's not good for your emotional health, and it propagates. Yeah, you're right. It propagates things that are counter to being productive and being happy and being healthy mentally, emotionally. You know, and it's like, I just try to use social media to say, hey, I'm a drummer, and that's it. But I do very little personal
scrolling
posts on social media. Yeah.
I mean, and research has shown how damaging it's been. I mean, that's why neither of my daughters have smartphones, even though like kids in her school have smartphones already and like are on the bus with them all the time on Instagram. And I'm like, hon, I'm not going to do that to you, because that's child abuse. Like, it literally is. Like, it's so bad for your emotional development, because you're constantly comparing yourself to everyone else, and you're hearing such a mixture of different voices, and some of it's good, but a lot of it's not. And to a child brain, I mean, going back to what you said too about like kids don't know anything, and that's totally true. And they learn from what they hear around them. And if they're just hearing all this crazy nonsense 24/7, then it's going to stunt your ability to function in daily society. And I'm seeing that in my counseling work with just like the people we're working with now have been so damaged by that. I mean, we even get kids in the emergency room that are literally actively suicidal because like the caregivers took their tablet away or something. And it's just so heartbreaking to see.
That's, I mean, I haven't heard that before. That's really disturbing.
It is. It's horrible to see.
That's really disturbing. I had never heard that before. I mean, I've heard of people being suicidal, but I always heard it either they were being cyberbullied or,
We get that
It's
too.
just like they don't
Yeah.
measure up to what the highlight reel is for everybody else's life. But the idea that you're taking that thing away from them, and I guess it makes sense, right? Because it's addictive.
Yeah.
So they go through withdrawals.
They do 100%. And it ties, again, going full circle here back to what you said about having that hole inside of you that you're needing to fill. And I think a lot of these kids are filling that hole with their likes and their mentions and their shares and their retweets and all that stuff. And so it's literally like when they get in trouble and then the parents decide that, like, okay, the punishment is we're taking away your phone or your computer or whatever. To them, that's like you've completely taken away the thing that allows me to have value in this world, because they haven't had a chance to develop any sort of internalized value of themselves. And it's like the saddest thing you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it's crazy, man. You have to, you have like, especially if say you have like a boy. So like, don't stay on the tablet. Go outside and break stuff.
Yeah.
Be a boy. Go out there in the world. Climb trees. Don't hurt yourself too bad.
Yeah.
But you gotta scrape your knee. You gotta pick yourself up and realize it'll heal.
I do that with my girls too. Like, I'm thankful that I live in a neighborhood where there's like a whole gang of kids like when I was growing up. And so I just send them out there. I'm like, go play in the street. You fall down, get back up. You don't need, is it bleeding? You don't need a Band-Aid. You're fine. Rub some dirt in it. Like, just get out there and do kid stuff.
100%, man. I think that's a big thing. I'm sure it's going to hit a point where people like social media and the tablets, like it goes the complete opposite direction. You know what I mean? It goes where it's just like the people are just like, I'm not giving my kid, like, I'm not, like, they're not allowed to have it until they're old enough to buy it themselves, and they're 18 years old. And I think I could see it getting to a point where it becomes so bad, because it's not getting better, it's getting fucking worse.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like, no, like, yeah, you want a tablet or you want a phone? You get a flip phone. You and it has a few numbers in it, but I'm not giving you something it's actively gonna fuck with your brain chemistry, and it's like back in the day when people were smoking and they didn't realize it caused cancer and caused all this shit. It's like, fuck crazy, man.
Yeah, we didn't recognize what a big deal this was. Like, yeah, we ended up getting one of those watches where you can only program like 9 specific numbers into it, and there's no social media connection, there's no internet, but she can at least get in contact with the people that she needs to, and they can get in contact with her. And really, that's all you need. I mean, it's like, I didn't have a smartphone until like later in college, and I didn't have a phone period until like just early on in college too. And it's like, look, we survived generations and generations without having these things. So let's just kind of go back to that a little bit. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. But that's been a big thing that we're working on in the field right now is sort of the fallout from, like you said, all this stuff that we just didn't know. Like, it just seemed like this fun novelty thing when, the internet got started and we were all on, AOL chat rooms and whatever. I don't think anyone realized like what an impact on sort of human evolution it was going to have.
Yeah, I mean, how could you really foresee that? Because from my observation, it's been a slow onset. You know what I mean? Though I did notice, like, in terms of like dating and stuff like that, there was a severe ramp up with the swiping apps.
Oh yeah,
like the
that's
Tinders and the Bumbles and all that. That's when, especially too with like dating, that's when like there was a very noticeable shift.
Yeah.
Of how we interact, how we treat people, because it's like, like fucking. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Like I did dating apps, but I never did the swiping stuff. And you'd always be able to find somebody and have a legit conversation. Now it's just like people, men and women, view the opposite sex as disposable. Yeah.
It's
like
because they've been mentally trained to devalue that whole aspect of it through that process of swiping. It's
Yeah.
awful, but I'm always glad to sit down with people like yourself. And, you know, I talked about this a bit with Finn. I talked about this with Charlie Fell from Lord Mantis. Like, it's nice to recognize, because people get quiet about it too. And it's like, you don't even know who you can have these conversations with. But then I find people that are like, dude, thank you. Like, like, it's good to just know there are other people out there who aren't crazy and recognize the problem and, you know, want it to be better. Because I don't think this is a conversation about like, oh, the new generation, they're lazy and participation trophies and whatever. Like, it's not really about that. It's about like, we know that it's,
you know,
yeah, and
like,
we know that it's hurting them, and we want them to be better. We want them to reach their maximum potential, and we want the world to be a better place. And we're recognizing that the route that we're on right now is not leading us there.
No, dude, not at all, man. Not at all. It's exacerbating, you know, it's like certain things on the dating apps and like social media. It's like, it's creating it's like, how do I explain this? It's like propping up, like, you know, people that have like narcissistic tendencies, right?
Yeah.
So people that have narcissistic personality disorder, it, like, that is the thing that gets them the thing that they want, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, that's not healthy. Like,
yeah, we've monetized that. Yeah, we're actively rewarding people being harsher and meaner and more polarized. And I think everybody's like trying to dig in their heels and figure out what to do about it, because you even see this happening with like Facebook and Twitter. It seems like they're scrambling to like develop systems and algorithms that are going to like somehow fix the problem. But the problem is that it's like all this is so subjective and complicated that I feel like anything that they put out there is only making it worse on some level. So it's like, I don't know what the solution is.
We're not designed, human beings aren't designed to interact with each other, especially on Twitter. I don't really do a whole lot of Twittering, but as far as my understanding
Twitter's
of the
the
way
worst,
that Twitter
in my
goes,
opinion.
it's like you get rewarded by like attacking people, and whether it's like political or it's like cultural or it's whatever, it's like you get shares and retweets by trying to burn people and shit like that. Like, so that's it's essentially actively promoting hurting people. And, like, no, I'm good, man. Like, I do very, very minimal to no interacting with like Twitter, because it's like I could see how unhealthy it is. I could see like, yeah, people are being rewarded by being shitty to one another. That's how you get the retweets. That's how you get the likes. That's how you get this. It's just like, nah, man, like, I'm good.
And we've all become like too self-important as a result. Like, I kind of wish we could just go back to a time where we all recognize that our opinions were just our own small opinion, and nobody really cared about them. Like, and when we acknowledge that, I think that was a driving force to just like, okay, I just got to work on me then. I just got to move forward. Whereas now everybody's got a pulpit and they think that their opinion is right and the most important. And so they've got this like ego trip that they're on, and it's bad for them at the end of the day too. Like, they don't realize it, but it's stunting their own ability to be happy and just live a good life.
Yeah. I mean, you know, everybody's striving for like the celebrity. They want to be a celebrity in their own little fucking reality show, and it's like, man, that's like, it's not it.
Yeah.
It's not the thing that is meaningful and value, but because of how like westernized culture, you know, it tells people that's important to be famous, to be a celebrity. It's just, it's all of it's really gross. It's really gross when you break it down.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate all this time that you've given me, and I know you're probably getting close to your practice. Any final words or plugs you want to make before we move to close here?
Oh no, man. I just like thanks for doing the interview. This is definitely good. And if anybody's curious about me and what I do and all that stuff, just go to chrishornbrook.com. All my information's on there for everything, because I do lessons and shit like that. I like my discography's up there. I have videos, like everything just basically pertaining to what I do is there. So I try to direct people to go to my website if they're interested.
Cool, man. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. I was browsing around there when I was looking for your contact info initially. And speaking of which, stay in touch, man. Like, it's been good talking to you. And if you ever find yourself in the Portland area, give me a ring. Maybe we'll meet up or something. But in any case,
that'd be time, man.
Yeah, for sure. All right,
homie. Well, I appreciate it, man. Let me know when it goes live, and be good.
For sure, man. All right, later. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Trench Talk. Once more, please do subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Consider sharing it with others. Follow us on social media. And one more time, consider signing up for our mailing list, because that's the only way to guarantee that you don't miss any of our content. I send out an email personally every Friday. And again, for you returning listeners who really feel like you're getting added value from this podcast and the other content, please do consider checking out the link to our Patreon account. Just $1 a month makes a huge difference. And at higher tiers, you get more perks like early access to these podcasts and personal shoutouts. Thank you as always for listening, but for now, this is Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.